Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June Sustainable CT Coffee Hour. We're really grateful to have Brian O'Connor from our partner organization, Connecticut Conference for Municipalities, here today to talk about the wrap up of the 2023 legislative session. So Brian is at the forefront of that, leading the CCM team, and he's very, very gracious of him to join us so soon after all of the long nights and hard work. So before we hand it to Brian, we'll just get started. We usually like to introduce members of our team, including our fellows, in case you've only met us through email, so get to know us a little better. So yeah, feel free to put your videos on if you're willing. And I'm Lynn Stoddard, Executive Director of Sustainable CT. Great to see you all. And I'll pass it around to our team. Torin?
Morning, folks. Torin Radiccioni. I'm a program assistant with Sustainable CT. Thanks for joining us today. Dorothy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dorothy. I'm also a program assistant with Sustainable CT. Nice to see everybody this morning. And I guess I'll pass it to Jim. I saw Jim. Oh, there's Jim. I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you. I'm Jim Hunt, Communications Manager at Sustainable CT. And who's left? I came in late, so I don't know who's left.
Inez? Oh, yeah. Is Inez here?
I don't think she's here.
Yeah, I don't think she's here. So why don't we move to the fellows? For those of you who don't know, we have 11 fellows, college interns, essentially working with us full-time this summer. They're awesome supports for our team and the towns and the Council of Governments. And they've begun to dig in over the past couple of weeks. So let's see. Adrian, I'll hand it to you to say hello and introduce yourself. And then if you guys can just ping pong it to each other as we introduce the fellows, that'd be great.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adrian Huck, and I am a Sustainable CT Fellow at Capital Region Council of Governments, and I'm a rising senior at Tufts University and originally from Derby, Connecticut. And I'll pass it to my co-fellow, Pooji.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pooji. As Adrian said, we're working with Capital Region COG, and I'm a rising sophomore at Wesleyan. I'll pass it to Lily.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Lily. I'm the fellow at WestCog, and I'm a rising senior at UConn, and I'll pass it to Nick, who's my co-fellow.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Lombardo. I'm a recent UConn graduate, and I'm working with Lily at WestCog this summer. And I'll pass it to Dylan.
Hi, all. I'm Dylan. I'm a rising junior at UConn. I am working in the Metro COG office. I'm originally from Stratford, and yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'll pass it to Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a rising junior at Central Connecticut State University, and I'm at the Southeastern COG. And I'll pass it to, has all the fellows gone?
I think we have introduced all the fellows. So great. Actually, since we have a small group, should we just continue and have everyone introduce themselves quickly? It's nice to know where you're all from. We'll save CCM for last. Alexis.
Hi.
Hi. It's great to see you.
I know. Good to see you, Lynn and team. Alexis Bivens, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives with the Connecticut Council for Philanthropy, and also Managing Director of the Supporting Organizing Work Funders Collaborative, and also a fan of Sustainable CT. So glad to be here this morning. Hi. I see Catherine on my screen.
Hi, I'm Catherine Deviney. I'm the energy specialist for the town of West Hartford. Glad to be here. Just want to catch up on the legislative stuff. I missed the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters session the other day. And I will pass it to, I see Kim, also from West Hartford.
Hi, everyone. Kim Hughes from West Hartford, and I am on the Conservation and Environment Commission here in West Hartford, though that is soon changing to the Sustainable West Hartford Commission. We're merging two commissions, so like same, Catherine, exactly the same. I'm happy to catch up. So nice to meet you all. I will pass that to who do I see? Judy. I will pass it to Judy Doyle.
I'm sorry. I'm just getting on. You just what do I need to do?
Okay, sorry, Mark. How about Mark?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mark Paul, I'm from Marlborough, Connecticut, working with the Sustainable Connecticut team and also a member of the Planning Commission.
Excellent. So yeah, for those joining us, we're just introducing our names in the town and our role there. So I think Judy, are you ready?
Yep. Oh, am I okay? Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm Judy Doyle. I'm with Barkhampton, Connecticut. I am part of our sustainable team. I'm the co-chair. And we are just starting, but we have a lot that we need to input.
Well, we introduced the fellows beforehand. There are a number of fellows here, so you'll want to be best friends with them, I'm sure. This summer.
We met our fellow last week, Brian. He was very, very nice. Yes.
Great. Let's see, Kate from Kim O'Rourke's office.
Hi, I'm Kate Gendrick. I'm Kim O'Rourke's summer assistant at the City of Middletown government. And we've also met at least one of our interns, Devin, who's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, happy to be here. And I will pass it to Katie.
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie DiGian Antonio, chair of the Sustainable Ethics Committee. And I don't know who else has not gone yet.
Stephen, I think. Stephen, do you want to say hello?
Yes, hello. I don't use Zoom a lot. I use Teams, so I was trying to unmute myself there. I'm from Shelton, Connecticut. I work in the building automation industry, and I'm trying to see how I can help my town with sustainability. It doesn't appear they have a robust program. So I was trying to catch up on what's changed with the state of Connecticut and see how I can help them, the city of Shelton, be more sustainable.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And we've been having conversations with some other folks in Shelton, so happy to have a connection afterwards and introduce you. And Emily Basham, hello. We're just saying hello and introducing ourselves. And I think you're the last one on.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Basham. I work at the Connecticut Green Bank and I live in New Haven. Happy Friday, everybody.
Excellent. All right. So the moment you've all been waiting for, we'll introduce our
One
partners.
second. I am Angel from Connecticut Post. I'm the facility operations manager. I've been here about 2 years. I am a Milford resident and local veteran. So I am here on behalf of Connecticut Post and also on behalf of Milford as a resident. So I just wanted to check in. I did do the meeting earlier this week with our Milford Sustainable team, which was really great. And I just want to see what's going on across the state.
Angel, thank you. I'm so sorry I missed you as the squares move around as people join. So great to have you here. Okay, so Rick Porth is with CCM and he's a member of our board. Rick, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Appreciate Brian doing this for us.
All right, Brian, it's all you. I guess you're the director of policy. Is that it for CCM? Yep. I'll let you fill in all the details.
The director of policy for CCM. Just a little background. We do have 5 others in the office. We have 4 other policy analysts and an admin that help us with our operations during the legislative session. We also have support staff that you may have come in contact with maybe in your interactions with us through our research department and also communications team, which helps us get our message out. let me start here and give kind of a background. This past session, I think we saw more bills than we historically get. Usually we get just over 3,000 bills a year that we have to kind of track from the beginning, and then ultimately it whittles down to about 1,000 that actually have a municipal impact, and then ultimately it gets further reduced during the legislative process. This year there was just under, I believe, 4,000 bills. So 30% increase, I believe that is, over the year prior, and so we had our work cut out for us. And I think the other thing too, I was talking about it right before we started, is that this is actually constitutionally, I believe, the longest session that you can have. Last year was the shortest session we could have constitutionally. So it added an extra week, and there's a lot of business that can be done in 1 week up at the State House. So I'm just going to go into a couple of issues. I know this is the sustainable group, so I'll probably start with some of the environmental issues, and then I'll do some of the general issues that impact municipalities, and then ultimately, maybe end on some budget items that may be of interest to you outside of sustainable CT, because most of them are municipal grants or education aid. In between, because I know that sometimes when people, start speaking and goes too long, feel free to interrupt and ask a question. It's actually not an interruption. I think it helps with the flow. If you so please, and you know how to do it, you can either raise your hand or do something in the chat box, and I'll try to stay on top of it. And if I miss anything, Lynn or Rick can, or Torrin can help out. So I'm going to start off. One of our legislative items this year was extended producer responsibility for tires. It was part of our legislative program and was a key issue for us over the last couple of years. And this year, we're pleased to say that it passed. And this is something that, I'll go into a little inside baseball here a little bit, where it looked like the bill was going to die. The tire advocates were successful in blocking it. And for all intents and purposes, it was not going to move forward through the House of Representatives, even though it was Speaker of the House Ritter's one of his priorities that he wanted to see get done. And he was at a press conference where he said, hey, even the Speaker sometimes doesn't get his bills. Well, after that, I think you guys are well aware of some of the news reports. You had a dumping in Trumbull, and I believe there was another tire dumping in another town. And that helped spur movement again. People are like, wait, what's going on here? They realize that the cost is borne by the municipalities to, remove the tires and actually recycle them and put them, get them back into the waste stream. And, I think that gave us the momentum that we needed. And, CCM is proud of our efforts on that. We actually were able to get our mayors and first selectmen and town administrators to call their state reps and state senators on this bill. And it was acknowledged again by Speaker Ritter that CCM helped get that over the finish line. So we were particularly pleased with that. Another bill, people might be on all sides of this issue, is the solid waste bill. We were opposed to the $5 fee that was initially proposed by DEEP for the trucking of out-of-state waste to states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and other parts of the Midwest. And part of our rationale for that is that there was no state plan. You're asking us to foot the bill for the lack of foresight on the state's end of not planning for the closure of Mira. So without a solid waste plan or that was statewide in concept, we weren't willing at that point in time to accept an additional fee on our residents. Now, I understand that we have to find an ultimate solution to this. I think some of the other areas we're open to are the organics recycling. Right now there was some expansion on the commercial side and also other large institutions such as educational facilities. And depending on the amount of waste, it could capture some of the municipal, secondary education. And we'll see. A lot of our local school districts are already implementing this, already doing it. And, we think this is a good experience for our municipalities to kind of enter into that space and then ultimately move it on to residential. I know, I think New York City just passed residential collection of organics, and you can see that it's happening. And that was one of the concerns that was brought to our attention, is how do you implement it on a city level where, a lot of the properties are renters and also very close together. How do you implement that? And then maybe based on what New York's experience and other municipalities experience, we can learn from that and ultimately implement that on a statewide level. The other part of that, in the beginning of the session, we were, I would say, we weren't outright opposed. We did have some people that were outright opposed. We also had a lot of members that were very supportive of EPR for packaging. And I think this is something that through more education, I think our members are moving toward this being a positive step that can be introduced to our public works and transfer facilities, and ultimately, hopefully, reduce waste, but also save money, because right now the haulers, we're at their mercy, so to speak, as far as the tipping fees that we pay, and it's one of those things that we can reduce the tonnage. Hopefully, we can reduce the amount that municipalities are ultimately paying for the reuse of packaging and other resources. Those are probably the big two. I don't know if people have questions on those. There's one other actually environmental bill where we were able to get LoCIP funds to be used for tree removal that are either dead or infested. We thought this was a positive step. Again, our municipalities trying to keep up with the removal of dead trees or infested trees has been a daunting task, and any pool of money will be helpful. So hopefully this will alleviate some of that, working with state DOT and also Eversource and UI in tree removal. I also know that it's very controversial in some areas. So there has to be a plan as far as how that is implemented, but ultimately for public safety purposes, we're supportive of these efforts.
Hey, Brian, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Can you talk a little bit more about the tire producer responsibility and exactly what that is? I imagine there's a surcharge. How do the tires flow?
Yeah,
What are the
it's going to be, sure. It's going to be very much like paint and mattresses, where the fee is going to be collected up front by the, I believe, the retailer. And the disposal, you go to because you'll have already paid for it, you'll be able to bring your tires to your local town transfer station, if you have that, and have them be able to remove and brought to basically a center that will collect the tires. And then ultimately, I'm not sure what the end product is with them, but the thought is that the rubber and some of the other materials inside a tire will be reused and reappropriated.
So would you be able to take the tires back to the place you bought them? Or
I think you
it's a
can do
town
that
collection
too.
point?
I think it's either or.
Yeah.
Wherever you purchase them, and then also the town.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I was just a clarifying question. Did you say the solid waste bill passed, or?
You know
or is
what?
it
I
still in
didn't
the works?
finish. I appreciate that. No,
Yeah,
it
no
did
problem.
pass.
It did pass. Okay.
It passed without the fee, and the organics section, as far as removing food waste, that was expanded to include more commercial properties. And they also set up basically a MIRA redevelopment board. I might not have the exact title correct, but this is to help clean up the site in Hartford, and then ultimately repurpose it, hopefully for public space.
Nice.
Space.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. The one other piece of that is that it does, I think, reduce the amount of plastics that can be used. I think they're trying to reduce the amount of plastic within containers too. So they're looking at that as well. Any other questions on the environmental side? I'm going to move on to housing. This is another issue that I know many people are very interested in, affordable housing. Ultimately, a bill did pass that will expand workforce housing within opportunity zones. It also had some tenant landlord issues that were addressed there. But I think the main component that I want to speak to is what they call the fair share bill. There's probably, I don't even know, but at least a dozen bills or so that were focused on housing. And ultimately, they came down to just one bill that ultimately passed. And there was a fair share component. For those who don't know, fair share is a concept where every town should have their fair share of affordable housing. The advocates of that were looking for zone changes. Some of our municipalities do not allow for, I think it's about 25 towns don't allow for multi-unit dwellings. And the other part of that is, the other part of the concept, besides seeing how many houses or housing units that a municipality should have, there was also the provisions that we were adamantly opposed to that would give standing to either developers or nonprofit groups to sue a municipality and force them to build multi-unit dwellings. Now, ultimately, that was rejected as a concept. There was even a provision that would allow a developer to go to the Municipal Redevelopment Authority and allow them to just file a complaint and say, I want to do a project without even being rejected. They didn't have to go before a municipal board or commission. And again, we thought, how do we even know this person exists? What's the project say? On the environmental side, the original proposal did allow for a relaxation of wetland rules and setbacks and other provisions. And again, we thought this was too much of a statewide or top-down approach, and opposed those measures as well. What passed was OPM was given $250,000 in the budget to work also in consultation with Department of Housing and Department of DECD to come up with a methodology anyway to determine what each town should develop. So that fair share concept is still out there, but it's just more of a study more than anything else. Now, one of the key provisions that we asked for is that they consult with municipalities. That was not in the original bill, and we were able to get that into the amendment because I think there's a lot of different factors besides local zoning. A lot of people are looking at this as a zoning issue, and I think affordable housing is much more than that. I think it's wages. What are people being paid to be able to afford rents or homes in Connecticut? The standard is 30% of your income should go to your housing, but not more. And that's what the fair share allocation is going to be looking at, is what is it to take for people to move into a home or a rent in Connecticut. And, we'll see where that ultimately ends up. I think also you have rising interest rates, which has caused people to not put their home on the market because they know that they can't buy something of equal value elsewhere within the state of Connecticut. If anything, they might have to pay less just because the interest rates for many people are at the 3.5 to 4.5 level. They've come down since, so you've seen a little bit more activity. But at the same time, we were talking to the realtors that this might be dated. This is about a month ago, but the realtors said, historically, This time of year, they had about 12 to 14,000 units for sale. This year, they only had about 3,000. So the inventory is way down as well, which I think is important to know. We stand committed to work with the Majority Leader Rojas, who is the proponent of the Fair Share bill, to see if we might be able to come to a resolution that's less punitive. The other part of that is that they were going to cut discretionary funds to municipalities that didn't make enough progress on the Fair Share plan if implemented, and that would have withheld funds for Urban Act grants, STEEP grants, and other economic development grants, I think through DECD. So that was probably our number one issue as far as opposition this year. And ultimately, when they did remove those provisions, we went neutral. We did not lobby for it or against it over the last 4 or 5 days. So that's housing. I don't know, it's a big topic, so maybe this is a good point to see if we have any questions on that. Okay. The other part, right?
I'm sorry, Brian. I do have a quick question.
Sure.
I do. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around this work. So I'm hearing a lot about, what I'm hearing the most about housing, however we talk about it, is like, what is the state vision for housing? We can't get on the same page. Like, where do you think we should be putting our energy? I know the session just ended, right? But it's a 24/7 kind of action plan that we have to have. So like,
it's interesting. Like, some of the concepts, we have some towns that 830G is an issue, but in many areas it actually works. So that's one of those issues. Can we look at 830G and see if there's any changes? I know one of the proposals there was 2 proposals I'll highlight. They didn't move too far out of committee. I think maybe one got out of committee, the other did not. One is naturally occurring affordable housing. These are units that maybe are more dated, older, but are affordable, but they're not deed restricted. Can that count toward the 830G goal? That's one of the concepts that's out there. The other one was to allow a senior 65 or older to deed restrict their house. And one of the things that they tried to do was to remove property taxes from that property if someone were to deed restrict their own home. We never like tax exemptions like that because it just puts the burden on other residents and commercial properties. But it was a concept that we did try to work out with the proponent of the bill to see if we might be able to work on that in the future, because concept wise it made sense to a certain degree. Now some of the advocates didn't like it because it's not creating new stock, and that's why they don't like the naturally occurring. They're naturally occurring, they don't like it because again you're not creating new housing stock, but you're also it's not deed restricted. They want the homes to be deed restricted. In Connecticut, what that is a commitment for 40 years that house remain deed restricted as affordable. Going back to the 65 and older property, one of the concepts that they had is that if it did sell and was no longer, within that 40-year period, no longer deemed affordable, then all the back taxes would be owed that they didn't pay or were abated. So that was one of the concepts that they had and try to incentivize people to keep it deed restricted.
Thank you, super helpful. I'd love to have a conversation offline about, so there's a group of funders, many funders who are interested in kind of understanding how to help better, right? Like what is the relationship, how to strengthen relationships between our nonprofits, our philanthropic leaders, our state agencies. There's a lot of thinking and potential for action on the table around housing and trying to gets us, a better unifying message. So I love to, kind of pick your brain on.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I think one of the other things I just want to bring about that I think you just kind of, tapped into is that it's going to take a lot of money, because the homes that, at least the fair share concept anyway, and it's actually a good bridge for another concept, is that they're looking at building homes for those who are extremely poor. I believe that's defined as they make 30% of the area median income. And then the other homes are, I think, 50% of the area median income. So in order for someone to stay in that rent, that was one of the concerns we had is, okay, let's say we build these housing units, who's going to subsidize it? This is one we were concerned that we were going to be the ones building them. Who's going to sustain, provide sustainable rents, because most of them would be rental properties. And, how would that be implemented and operational? So I think that was another piece that was never actually really developed or contemplated this year. And I think that's something that needs to be done in tandem with the overall goal of building more affordable housing units, which goes to the other concept of, just wrote it down here, the transit-oriented development. This would have been within a half-mile radius of, either a bus station or a train station. These would have been more market-driven, market rate housing. I think there would have been a 10% set aside for affordable units. That ultimately did not pass. And again, I think that's going to be contemplated with the fair share concepts. CCM, as part of our legislative agenda, did support TOD as long as it was enabling. And we would actually be okay with the opt-out provision, sort of like what they did with the accessory dwelling units. What we saw, or our experience with that, is that while no one did the state concept, I think every state opted out, or every town opted out of the state plan. It did allow for some municipalities to actually, who had prohibited it, to put them online. And other towns that already had them online removed some of the barriers to have them be adequately used for affordable housing or an extension of bringing a family member home, is that they allowed them to be detached, rather than attached. So some towns made it originally that it had to be attached to the existing structure. By moving it to detached, that opened up to more units and more possibilities. And the other thing too is that many towns had restricted that it had to be, part of a bloodline or a relative, and most of those were removed as well in order to, again, open up opportunities for different people. So we saw that it spurred conversations, and we thought this would be good with the TOD. And I think I think people are more open to the TOD than some of the other concepts. So it's something that I think we'll continue to work on and advocate for at CCM. Any other questions on housing?
I do. So just
Sure.
from Connecticut Post, Angel, again, historically, I know you were talking about this earlier about zoning. We've gone up to the zoning board in Milford several times. We're trying to renovate the mall and go to an open air concept that allows us to have low income housing on the property. And they've blocked the zoning twice now. As we prepare to go up for a third time, I know we're going through a leadership change here as well. Do you think anything's going to change this time around, or is the city going to continue to butt up against us with the changes?
I was going to say, I don't know the particulars of why it was rejected or your application. So I don't, I'm not as familiar with it.
Okay.
But at the same time, that's a concept that Majority Leader Rojas brought up early in the session. It didn't make it through the committee process, but was to try to incentivize or encourage, former malls and creating them into commercial and housing space, and provide, points for that and, incentives. I think it's an interesting concept. I think they're looking at that down in Waterford as well as Milford. I don't know if you're involved in that one. But it is, I think, being more received better down there because that one's almost completely vacant. I don't know how the Connecticut Post Mall is, if it's even closed or operational. But at the same time, I think it's an interesting concept that should be explored. And, you know, I without knowing why it was rejected, I can't give you any advice, but it's probably not a bad concept. Maybe if there's more market rate housing with it, that might be helpful.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I'm going to move on to some other key issues that CCM worked on. Before I go too far into that, I just want to point out last year we changed our policy committee process. We consolidated our committees down from 9 to 5. And part of the reason why we did that is because we were working in silos. You know, we had an energy committee, but we also had a land use committee. So we combined those. We also looked at municipal law and labor issues. And what I think it did was it allowed us to develop more robust proposals. It also reduced the number of proposals we had. If you looked at some of our prior legislative agendas, we were, I think the year before last, we were at 27. And I think the year before that, we were close to 30, you know, I think 29 or 30. And so we went down to 14 proposals, which if you look at most interest groups, they do 3 to 5. But we have, you know, we're reflective of the legislature. So we have a lot of different concepts that are promoted. This year we went down to 14, and we were pleased to say that 8 of them actually were enacted into law. So we're pleased with the results of that and hope to build off of that in the future. Some of those are budget related, so I'll get into those a little later. But some of the other ones that we worked on were complete streets, you know, looking at traffic enforcement technology or red light cameras. This was promoted by many of our urban mayors who were looking at trying to reduce the number of incidents between pedestrians and vehicles. And it had really, you know, since the pandemic, again, my colleague mentioned this yesterday on the call. It's like, did people forget how to drive? You know, they're speeding, they're running red lights, they're running stop signs. And, you know, you can't, it's just not feasible to have a police officer at every corner or being able to, you know, to monitor every spot that may be problematic. So part of the thought was to put up red light cameras. Now it is going to be, you know, I know some of the ACLU is concerned about that. So there is going to be sort of a rigorous process in order to get the cameras approved and cited. That's going to go through DOT. I think right now they're concentrating on areas around schools or areas that have a high incident of accidents, particularly with pedestrians or bicyclists. So that will be implemented. It's going to take a couple of years because they have to go through the regulatory process through DOT. The other part, I mentioned a couple of them already, but firefighter and EMT recruitment and retention, there's something we advocated for was to have a task force put in place. Many of our towns, even career towns that have career or paid firefighters and also police officers, they're having trouble retaining and recruiting candidates. And we see it particularly with EMT and firefighters in volunteer towns. You know, it's tough just the way, you know, people are working further away from home. You still have people that actually work from home now, but it hasn't improved volunteerism for firefighters and EMT. So they're looking at how we might be able to best approach that issue. The other areas, this one is also a budget item, but I'll mention it, is to address the shortage of paraprofessionals. I know one of the areas they're looking at is healthcare. Currently, most paraprofessionals don't get the same healthcare as teachers. So the thought is to move them into a better plan and have it replicate what teachers receive as far as their healthcare benefits. And they're also looking at minimum pay and some other provisions like that in order to again, make it the value of that position be reflected in their wage. A key bill that we worked on was, we've been working on this since 2015 on some level, is providing benefits to firefighters who contracted cancer. We've always indicated or advocated or basically stated that firefighters can already go into the workers' comp system and apply for benefits as a workplace injury. Most are reticent to do that. Many instances, the part of the reason why is because when you go into workers' comp, you also, don't mind me here, I got to plug in. The computer's about to die. Sorry. Most firefighters, you go into workers' comp, there's a delay sometimes in treatment or payment because you're going through the process, you're originally denied. And I think because of the nature of cancer, you want to get the treatment as fast as you can. And so I think that's one of the issues. So if we're looking at regular workers' comp, that's something that I think is a legitimate issue that we need to work on. Now, the firefighters wanted to make it a rebuttable presumption that the municipality had to prove that the cancer wasn't contracted at the workplace. So this puts the burden on the municipalities where the regular workers' comp system is really sort of a no-fault system. So we butted heads over that for years. And this year we said, you know what, let's see how we might be able to provide these benefits outside of workers' comp. Years ago, we did create the Firefighter Cancer Relief Fund. It has never actually been adequately funded. The funding source we originally had was rejected actually by the federal government because it was on a E911 bill, but it wasn't itemized as for what its purpose was. If they had done that, then it would have been deemed appropriate or okay. But because it was sort of hidden within another tax, it was disallowed. So that's been going on for at least 5 years. So this year we were able, because of some of the financial strength that Connecticut has right now, we were able to secure $5 million to add to the Cancer Relief Fund. And basically, the process mirrors what occurs in workers' comp, except the town would pay the bills and then seek reimbursement through the Cancer Relief Fund. There are some provisions that if the fund goes insolvent, then it's not the town's responsibility. But at the same time, if they're in the system, they'll be taken care of. So I think it is something that, is $5 million enough? We don't think so. We originally asked for 15 million. So I think what we're going to do is go back to the legislature. We're going to work with the firefighters to find a more sustainable, reoccurring funding source. Personally, I'd like to look at the cell phone bill like they had done in 2016, but this time actually itemize and say what it's for. This has been similarly with the crumbling foundations and the $12 charge you see on your insurance bill that goes to help individuals, creates a fund that helps individuals replace their crumbling foundation. So we're trying to do that with the Cancer Relief Fund. Government immunity. This is a big fight that we've had 3 years again with trial attorneys, where they were trying to remove some of the government immunity for EMT or police or fire, who are basically responding to a call, for lack of a better term. And there's an incident or accident. Now, it doesn't, we've always, if it's negligence, we've always been responsible for that. But this would basically, the way the law was originally proposed by the trial lawyers, is that they'd have to, they call it ministerial or administrative. They'd have to basically follow all the laws. So they'd have to stop at every stoplight. They wouldn't be able to pass. And that gave us a lot of concern. So we just wanted to specify, so they tweaked the language just a little bit to make it more clear There was a court case that sided with municipalities, so the trial lawyers wanted to undo that. But I think we successfully came to a compromise agreement that explicitly states if they're responding to a call, if it's negligence, they're still supposed to slow down. They're still supposed to try to, create the space when they do pass vehicles in a line, let's say on an interstate, but protect them on a liability issue and protect municipalities on a liability issue. So that was one that, again, that I think was important to us. Another one is the Municipal Employees Retirement System, otherwise known as CMERS. This is a pension plan that I believe on some level 107 towns are in. It could be just your housing authority or public health district, but most of the time it's a police, fire, or other municipal positions, boards of ed as well. That is in statute. It's not like a normal negotiated plan. And in the way it's structured right now, contribution rates fall heavily toward municipalities, and it was becoming unsustainable with the municipal or with the bond investments not performing as well. The discount rate is not adequate. So in order to fully fund it, the costs were borne by municipalities. And I want to give kudos to Comptroller Scanlon, who helped put us together with labor, municipalities, I should say, with labor, and come up with an agreement, a short-term agreement that will help alleviate some of those cost pressures and create a more sustainable fund for our pensioners. And what it did was, we did, they're going to re-amortize the fund from 17 years to 25. So that's going to give an immediate $30 million relief to our municipalities that are enrolled in CMERS. The other two key provisions is that currently the COLA is at 2%, and it's going to reduce it by 0.5% over the next 4 years until it gets to 0. So we're actually eliminating the floor that had previously been there. And prior to the pandemic and prior to the inflationary environment we're in now, there was many times where maybe the CPI was 1, but they'd still have to pay 2%. So they were paying over the consumer price index. So the other part of that is that we actually increased. There was a cap of 6%. So again, in this kind of environment where rates had been up to 7% at one point, they would be reimbursed at up to 7.5%. Again, historically, at least in the last 40 years, that's less likely, but in the 80s and 70s, it was more common. And maybe we're in that situation now. We don't know yet. The other two things, that also did what they call a drop plan. This is a deferred retirement option plan. This was actually, there was some concern because of some of the COLA changes that we might see a mass exodus of employees. So the labor union said, what about a drop plan? This will help incentivize people to stay longer because they get, rather than paying into the fund, they'd pay into, let's say, for lack of a better term again, an account, so they get paid a lump sum after the 5 years. And again, they would work those 5 years and work longer into the system. The other two things that it has is a reform of the governance structure. This will allow for more of a municipal voice. We didn't have one before. And also the data collection of non-CMERS towns in order to see what plans are being offered by other municipalities and see if there's best practices or recommendations that can come from that. There's also a commitment from Comptroller Scanlon to see if we might be able to create a tier 2. Right now, if you follow the state, they're at tier 4. So we've been running off of basically the same structure since 1947. And, obviously things have changed since then. In fact, the COLA change was in 2000. And that's actually one of the reasons why we've had funding issues on the municipal side and some of those cost burdens. I see Dylan has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly ask, how many people in the state are like affected by the CMERS program? Just curious.
I believe it's about 9,000 employees. And now I don't know the numbers of members, let's say family members that are actually, pensions are different than healthcare. I apologize. So it's about 9,000.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I can get you firmer numbers for that if you like. Any other questions on some of those bills? I'll just go into two more non-budgetary bills, and then we'll get into, actually one of them is budgetary, but the concept is non-budgetary in a certain sense. There's going to be a change for how motor vehicles are assessed. Basically, it's going to move from what's currently, they call it NADA, National Automobile Dealers Association valuation, and we're going to go to the MSRP, which is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. This will save the car owners money in the end. I think one of the concerns we had with it was that it was actually a 20% reduction as originally proposed in the what we would collect, and we'd have to make that difference with on real estate or personal property. And so we were able to change some of the formula, so it was kind of even. But then some people thought we went too far, that it was too generous for municipalities. So long story short, we delayed it by a year, and we're going to continue to work on that in the interim. So for those who are on finance boards or assessors, that'll be coming down the pike. The other one too is we were able to successfully defeat a bill that would have reduced the interest rate on delinquent taxes. And one of the things I want to point out here, you'll hear 18%. We're not a credit card company. It's not 18% every month. It's 1.5% every month. That adds up to 18% annually. They were looking to reduce it to 12%. And again, I think our thought is that you want to hold taxpayers accountable and make sure that they can pay. And there are programs and efforts that if someone is falling behind or has hit a hardship, that you can negotiate with them and help in those particular situations. But we also don't, we think it's enough of a deterrent, but also not usury in the sense of being punitive to the taxpayer. So that is something that is important to us. All right. Any questions on any non-budgetary bills that I either went over or those that you might be interested in? All right.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask and go back to the emergency call responsibility one that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little more? I mean,
yeah,
just a bit about.
It's very technical, but yeah. I will if I can get my notes here.
Yeah, and a bit more about like the negligence stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, but right now, the bill as drafted, or what was originally proposed, would have provided imposed greater municipal liability for municipal employees operating a motor vehicle in emergency situations. Basically, if they're going to a call, whether it be police, EMT, or fire. Right now, the way it is those drivers or employees are using their discretion. So some of it is you roll up to a stop sign and then go through it. You try to look both ways, obviously, to make sure that nothing's uncommon, but you do run a red light, technically. So they were just trying to make sure that if an incident happened and someone was doing their due diligence or doing their best to prevent the situation, but unfortunately something happened, that there would still be immunity. for both the municipality and that employee. Now, if there's negligence, let's say it's a non-emergency situation and they run through a red light, they would be liable and the municipality would be liable. So what ultimately we did was just make sure that the situation I just described, where someone was performing and using their discretion in the act of responding to an emergency, is still protected, and the municipality is protected in that situation if there is an incident or accident, and then specify that if there's negligence in the performance of their duties that are non-emergency, that then they would both the municipality would be held liable.
Okay, so can I ask you a hypothetical question applying to that law then?
Sure.
So I know this is a little bit of a problem in my town, but like hypothetically, if there was a police officer not with their lights on and they were speeding down a residential road and there was pedestrians there, but no one got hit, what would happen in that situation? Would there be accountability there? Would the pedestrians be able to have any recourse, or would an incident have to happen?
An incident would have to happen. I don't really know, other than calling your mayor for selectmen.
Right. Okay.
Situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I know we're actually running up against the hour. I was actually thought I might not have enough material, so I'll be quick. I just want to point out a couple things. Education aid. This was something that was probably outside the one I mentioned, housing. That was one we were number one opposition to. The number one bill that we're in support of was education reform. This was led by Representative Jeff Curry. We joined with other stakeholder groups such as the superintendents, as well as boards of ed, and also a group called the Connecticut School Finance Project, in advocating for additional money for ECS, which is the Education Cost Sharing Grant. We were successful in receiving an additional 127 million this year, and over 2 years, I believe the increases go up to 329 million overall. And I think what this does is, people may not be aware, but many municipalities are underfunded according to the ECS formula. Back in 2017, they passed a law that slowly ramped it up over 10 years. And again, because of some of the inflationary pressures, both, just the cost of operating the school have gone up, that acceleration hasn't kept pace. So we're looking to increase the rollout of that fund and reduce the time period. Right now, I think based on this, we might be able to accelerate by a couple of years. But it was a significant increase. The other part of that is that you would see a decline in some towns that are considered overfunded by the formula. We held them harmless, so they wouldn't see a reduction. And I think as part of that, there's some other provisions that I think will help alleviate some of the cost pressures. One is that if you're an open choice school, or your student is an open choice, let's say the town of Hamden sends a student to New Haven, they would be able to bill them for that student. Right now it's at 100%. In 2025, they're going to cap it at 58%. So that way, because they're getting paid elsewhere for accepting that student, it was considered paying for the student twice in some respects by the state. The other part of that is that it provides incentives for towns that accept open choice students. So that if, let's say, a student from Hartford goes to Portland schools, then Portland would see an increase in funding for that student. So again, to try to provide incentives for host communities to accept more students and provide diversity within their school-age kids. The other part of that is we were able to get, I believe it's an extra 19 million for the special ed excess cost grant. Again, this is something that is capped. Currently, you're supposed to be paid at 4.5 times the cost of a student. Up after that, the state would pay. That's been capped artificially, and now we're moving toward that 4.5%, 4 times the cap that we had. That's on the books. The other thing too that I just want to highlight is that there was an extra 3% that was added to pilot. Pilot is payment in lieu of taxes. This pays towns for properties that are exempt either because they're state-owned or if they're college or hospital properties. They increased the tiered pilot, which is the current formula, from 50% up to 53, 40 up to 43, and then if you're tier 3, 30% up to 33%. And again, this is to accommodate towns that, for instance, like New London, who I think close to 50% of their town is tax exempt, to help pay them and offset the costs for those tax exempt properties, because municipalities, for the most part, are funded primarily by the property tax on, not only cars, but also, residences and commercial and industrial properties. So that was a part of our legislative agenda as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's a ton more. Thank you so much. I know some people have to jump because it's a little after 11. Would you be comfortable putting your email in the chat in case people have any follow-up questions, or someone on your team maybe? That would be great. And yeah, if there's any last questions, we can probably have time for one, but otherwise we'll respect people's schedules. And okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. And there is a recording, Torrin will send it out to those who registered. So if you missed part of it, we appreciate it and the partnership. All right, everyone.
You got it. Look forward to working with you again.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.